3, 2, 1.
Hey there, you beautiful badass. Welcome to the Carrie Croft Show. I'm your host, Carrie Croft, delivering you stories that get you pumped up and feeling like the unstoppable savage that you are. So grab your coffee, put on your game face, and let's do this thing, baby.
3, 2, 1.
Facing challenges conceiving? Experience compassionate care from leading fertility experts at Reproductive Gynecology and Infertility in Ohio. At RGI, your dedicated navigator is a call or text away for concierge support throughout your journey. Start your path to parenthood at rgiohio.com. Megan and Mike Scherer, welcome to the Carrie Croft Show.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Just want to drink you in a little bit. I always love when I have newbies just plopped in the chair. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. How did we originally find each other?
I actually saw on Instagram Dr. Jane.
Dr. Jane. Little shout out to Doctor. I know he's out there listening. AJ Jane. So you saw that episode.
Yeah, and then I was like, I need to listen to this podcast.
Okay, cool. So when I saw what you guys were doing, I was like, okay, I need to know more. I need to know more about these people. And so you and I jumped on a call and I learned more about Worth the Wait. When I read your intake form, it choked me up.
Oh,
like
really?
I don't know what happened. I got like this, I just started like getting teary. I'm like, wait a minute. So you had cancer when you were 26.
Yeah.
But then your father and your grandfather?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a lot of cancer in your family.
Tons.
So can you give us just sort of the frame up of that to start this off?
Yeah, it's Megan knows this from, I remember when we started dating, like later on when we were in college and that kind of thing, I would say like, hey, I'm going to get cancer. Like I just felt it. And the reason I felt it was because, so my dad was first diagnosed in 1994. So I was 9 years old. And my only experience with cancer, it sounds really funny, but it was a Peanuts episode. And it was, I don't know how I watched this episode, but it was a Peanuts episode where a kid that's like friends with Charlie Brown has cancer. And, watched that episode. I knew cancer was this illness that made you lose your hair, that kind of thing, depending on the treatment you had. And then fast forward a year or two later, and my dad's diagnosed with cancer. And I distinctly remember the day I got home from school, and he had surgery to have a tumor removed that was actually in his salivary gland. And I got home from school, and my mom said, hey, your dad has cancer. And I just remember I went upstairs into my parents' closet, and I was looking at family photo albums. I don't know why. I don't think I'm like a sentimental person, but it hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know this from Peanuts, like cancer, this is serious, this is bad. Anyhow, long story short, he turned out that he had surgery and that treated that cancer. But then about 2 years later, my grandfather was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he lived in Pittsburgh, so they moved in with us. And my parents were both in nursing, so my mom wanted him to live with us, be treated at the James, and take care of him while he was going through. I mean, he had surgery to remove a lung or a lobe of a lung, I can't remember exactly what, and then he had chemotherapy, and then he had radiation. So they lived with us for a long time, like 8 months. And, I was a kid going through some pretty formative years in puberty and all that as my grandparents are living with us going through this kind of thing. So cancer had just always been around. And then there were years where it went away. But then when I was a freshman in college, my dad was diagnosed again. And he was diagnosed with a very rare type. And at one point, the doctor even said, like, hey, you need to get your affairs in order because you might have pancreatic cancer. He had a tumor on his pancreas, and they didn't know if it was inside of his pancreas or what. But he said, like, if it's pancreatic cancer, get ready. And so as a freshman in college, I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to move home and help my mom, depending on what happens here. And long story short, he had a a really weird form of blood cancer. And he went through a pretty serious surgery and then radiation for that, and he's fine. And then I was diagnosed at 26. And like the crazy thing is, so my dad was in the Navy, but he was a field medic with a Marine platoon, and he was stationed at Camp Lejeune. And if anyone follows the news, Camp Lejeune was contaminating the water supply. Like they had a contaminated water supply. And so they're having this big settlement and whatnot. And my dad was stationed there at like the years of highest contamination. We find that out after the fact, but sure enough, I have cancer, or had cancer. So
How did you discover your cancer, and what kind of cancer did you have?
I had testicular cancer. And I just like any,
Well,
guy.
I guess that answers how you discovered
Exactly. Like any guy, when I would go to sleep, I'd put my hands down my pants, and, and so, and actually I remember I was playing adult rec hockey, and I got home late one night, got a shower after a hockey game, got in bed and put my hand in my pants. And this was January. And I remember thinking like, I didn't feel like a lump on my testicle, but my right testicle felt a little harder than my left. So, as guys, we're like intimately aware of like, but then also as a typical guy, I just kind of said, oh, something's weird. Like it'll go away. I'm not worried about it. 5 months later, I started to have other symptoms, and I had weird pain in my chest. And anytime I would move my legs, it felt like someone kicked me in the nuts. So I was like, okay, this really is starting to feel weird. I'm nervous about this. So I Googled my symptoms. I Googled, constant pain in my testicle, and I Googled tenderness in my chest, like in my pecs. And the very first result was testicular cancer. And told Megan, and she said, okay, go talk to a doctor. Like, how long has this been going on? And I said, a long time. I just didn't want to deal with it.
Do you think you subconsciously maybe knew it
Yeah.
possibly? Okay, because I'm thinking for someone who's like, I'm going to get cancer, maybe there was some kind of thing going on there where you're like, don't let it be true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so by the time you got to it, what stage was it, and then what treatment did you have to get?
Well, so that was the interesting thing. They diagnosed me originally with stage 1, and so I went through surgery. They removed my testicle, and then with testicular cancer, it spreads really, really fast. So they start giving you like constant blood tests and X-rays and CT scans. But after I had surgery, my blood test showed my tumor markers going down. And so with testicular cancer, it's really weird because it's a germ cell cancer. And so I had pregnancy hormones in my body. It was giving off HCG, and that's why my chest hurt. So it was like I was a pregnant female.
Wild.
Yeah. And so that's what they were measuring. They're basically giving me pregnancy tests. And my HCG levels started to fall, and then it went up again like a couple weeks after surgery. And so the doctor said, hey, you might need chemo. We're going to give you another blood test and see if this was just a false positive or what. They gave me another blood test. The tumor markers went down to where it looked like I was fine. So then I went on a surveillance routine where I would get chest x-rays, blood work, and CT scans. I can't remember the exact amount, but I want to say it was like every 8 weeks. And about a year after I started doing that, my CT scan showed a bunch of lymph nodes swollen. So at that point, the doctor said, okay, we're going to go straight to chemo. So you have a week to get ready, and then we're going to do chemo. And after chemo, we'll see if you need additional treatment.
So you did the chemo, all is well.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were 26 when this happened?
26 when I was initially diagnosed, 27 when I went through chemo.
But didn't you say your dad was 3 different times with cancer?
Yeah, then my dad was diagnosed again in, do you remember what year? 2015?
5 or 6 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, he was diagnosed with prostate.
Okay.
So that's 3rd type.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's still alive and kicking.
What's your dad's name?
Bob.
Bob. You're a dude, Bob. You're a tough one.
He is. Yeah.
Keep moving, Bob.
Yep.
So Megan, when he gets diagnosed, how long were you guys together?
Oh gosh, we started dating at 15. So we'd been married about 3 years. And, certainly not what I was expecting as a, still newlywed person. But we have a really great support system in town, and everyone just kind of rallied around us and helped us get through that. And I was still working full time when he was going through chemo. So we had people like sign up, friends and family, to take him to his infusion treatments. And it really, as awful as cancer can be, it really strengthened our relationship because we were like, yes, we have made it through this together.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there's always light in those dark times. And there's always things that you come out of better and stronger. But man, like, you probably get pissed sometimes, or did get pissed sometimes, where you're like, did it contribute to any anger or bitterness that you, and maybe even today, you have to work through, where you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I dealt with anger for a very long time, to the point where, once we really started Worth the Wait and kind of started working through this, and you could see some positive aspects out of what I went through, I'm no longer angry. I mean, I'm still, Megan and I joke, 'cause I'm a small guy, I'm 5'6", but I'm like,
I'm ready to take somebody down.
that's the whole thing. I tell Megan, I'm like, if I got in a fight, like, I don't, I'm not a fighter, but I'm like, there is still anger there, absolutely, but it's much, much less than it was. I was angry for years, and it manifests itself in different ways. Like I drank a lot, right? I wasn't fun to be around sometimes. I would get real obsessive about doing different things like working out just to blow off steam. And I think all of that has contributed to who I am now, where I don't drink alcohol anymore. I take care of myself. I work out. I have a nice role at work where I mentor a lot of people and kind of talk about, mindset and that sort of thing. And then all the stuff we get to do through Worth the Wait is just, it's therapy.
Oh, I can only imagine. You found a really positive way to channel all of this stuff that life inevitably presents you. And you're like, wait, life, but I'm not ready, life. And it's like, yes, you are, Daniel-san. You're ready.
Yeah, life doesn't give a shit.
No,
right?
It's like it's here to teach you. And you can take it and pick it up like you're doing, or you can sit and wallow in it. Yeah. It was interesting what you wrote about when I asked you how people would describe you. You say quiet, driven, egotistical, a mentor, an asshole.
Yeah. Did you really say that?
And I found that to be so, I loved that answer. I loved it because it was, I feel like it was very self-aware. But it also, in just hearing your story and understanding how cancer hasn't just, it's come at many different directions with no real, it's not like it's one cancer that's returning. Not that makes it better at all. Yeah. But my God, you're just like, wait, the C word's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been a constant in my life. And, I talk to people now. We have a friend actually that was diagnosed not too long ago. And I told her, like, hey, I finished chemo in 2012. I was given a clean bill of health, but it is with you every single day. Every day.
And I've said this before to friends and on this show, the number of times that cancer crosses my mind in a day's time, and I can only imagine how you have to put that at bay. Yeah. Because it could probably, the fear and the uncertainty could completely overtake you.
Yeah. No, it can. I've become much more emotional. Like, I don't know, just things trigger me now in the sense of I'll just start crying at, something that sounds kind of stupid. Like
Annie Lennox, No More I Love Yous.
Yeah. Yeah, you did read that for me.
Oh, I read it all. It all. I got the biggest chuckle out of it. I was, no more.
That's
a
great song.
It is. Yeah. But it was like so unexpected, right? Yeah. I'm like, I haven't thought about that song in a long time.
Well, it's funny, that song, my dad and I are really close, and he, because we were dealing with such serious stuff when I was a kid, I appreciate how I was raised because my parents didn't baby me. So we would have these long conversations about songs like that. And he would say like, hey, people aren't going to be in your life forever. So you tell people these things. And yeah, so I live my life through songs that I remember at different moments of time. And Annie Lennox, No More I Love Yous, gosh, I remember that in like 6th grade, 7th grade. Yeah, exactly.
So let's parlay this into the infertility struggle. Did the doctors, since you were 26, you hadn't had a family yet, there was proactive stuff that took place, right? Or how does that all work? And how did this infertility journey, how'd all that go?
Yeah, so we were really lucky. Only about 50% of young cancer patients are even counseled that their treatment could affect their fertility or not. But Mike had some really great doctors at the James, and they were on it. They said, like, hey, you need to go bank sperm. And we had a few conversations before he decided he really wanted to do that.
Yeah, I wasn't going to. You know, at 26, I never had a strong desire to be a dad. I don't know why. Just never really thought about it. And when they recommended a bank, I was kind of like, let's just get the treatment done and let me get on with my life, you know, especially with testicular cancer, because everyone's like, you're going to be fine. Like, it's got such a high cure rate, which you kind of want to punch people in the face who say that, because if they want to go through the chemo, be my guest.
Well, it's just a very naive thing to say. Someone who doesn't really understand the intricacies of all of that.
Exactly.
So is this where you kind of stood up and you're like, listen, motherfucker, you're getting the sperm. you banking the sperm, or we're gonna have a big ass problem. That would have been me. I would have been driving his ass to the sperm bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, this seems a bit short-sighted, Mike.
A bit,
like,
yeah.
let's do it. Like, it was expensive. We were 26. Insurance didn't cover anything. My parents were like, we'll just pay for it. And so he got himself over there and did the job.
Yeah.
And
Megan's the source of all of our good decisions in life.
She seems very balanced.
Yes. Yeah.
Very straight. You can see the yin and yang here. You can see the equilibrium for sure. Okay, so then tell me about the family building and what happened.
Yeah, so Mike banked before surgery, and then when he had the reoccurrence, the next oncologist said chemo is not going to be, good on your reproductive organ that's left. And so he banked again, and then we were kind of like we had a really fun summer, like the summer after he was done with treatment. We called it the summer of Mike. And
Seinfeld reference, if anyone, Summer
we
George.
got to do, all the things that we had missed out on because, he couldn't eat out. He couldn't, we just had to be so careful with him that summer to make sure that his immune system was okay. So we had a really fun summer. And then after that, we were like, okay, we think we're ready to try to have a family. And that's where, we just didn't know what we were getting into. And so, I think they said, you're supposed to try for 12 months if you're under 35. And we were, I think, 30 or something like that. And so we did that. Well, we did 6 months, and then I just said to my OBGYN, I was like, let's figure this out. I think there might be a problem. So we got referred, and we ended up going to a few different fertility specialists. And what was disheartening is that the focus, and you probably get this, you've been through IVF, the focus is on the female. And they're like, well, we'll just pump her full of more medication. We'll just do this. And we're like, but wait a minute. We think we know, why we're having such a hard time having a baby. So we went through 7 IUIs, and that was pretty crazy looking back, thinking about that. We both had really good jobs, but didn't have any fertility coverage, which was really unfortunate. And I just felt like that was such a low point for us. We were so isolated, and all of our friends were having babies, and I was getting all the invitations, and people wanted me to help plan their baby shower. And I'm like, I'll come, but I can't.
That's where I draw the line. I'm not icing any cupcakes.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to protect myself here in this situation. We actually looked at an adoption agency because I was hell-bent. I was like, I am having a baby. And Mike was right there next to me supporting and said, like, hey, if this is what we really want to do, let's do it. And then on the 7th IUI, we got pregnant with Elliot, had him, and, you know, Mike always says, like, oh, I never wanted to be a dad. I'm like, I don't know how you can even say that, Mike, because he is legitimately the best dad ever. The bond that he and, like, I'm the third wheel. When all of us are together, like, they are the same person. And it's so fun to, like, see this side of Mike. And, you know, Mike is so full of wisdom. And, like, for him to be able to pass that on to his son is so incredible.
I think it's a very typical thing for people to say, especially men. No offense, guys. But if you don't know, you don't know. And it's like, yeah, you know, it might be cool. And then your heart breaks wide open and you think, how did I ever? That's the gift, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of that rite of passage that is holding. I mean, it's like I could cry thinking about both of my kids. It's just like wild. And then before you have them, it's so abstract. Oh, that would be great. Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But man,
there's kind of a part 2 of our infertility story also. We wanted to have another child. And by that time, Mike was going to some different doctors, and they basically said to us, like, no one ever should have done IUI. You guys should have gone straight to IVF. That's really your only option. So we decided, after a very long time of, you know, just thinking it through, we decided we'd do one round and see what happened. So we had a single embryo, and it was like before the testing was really a thing. So we don't really know, you know, if it was normal or not, but that was a failed attempt. And right after that, 2020 hit, and we just had a lot of time to reflect and think about, you know, how fortunate we are to have this one child. And we kind of, like, I remember being on a hike, and we were just spitballing different ways around, like, what can we do to show Elliot, like, how lucky he is? And we thought, well, maybe we could just pay for, like, some fertility treatment, maybe for one couple that has cancer. And Mike has a good friend who's an attorney, and they were out at a happy hour, and he was like, this sounds like a 501c3. Like, I'll set it up for you guys. And we were off and running.
ready to elevate your self-care game? Boss Gal Beauty Bar is a modern med spa offering everything from cosmetic injectables, lasers and microneedling, to medical-grade facials and skincare. Conveniently located in Clintonville, Grandview, Powell, and Easton, making self-care a priority has never been easier. Use code CROFT for $25 off your first visit.
I mean, that's truly why we started Worth the Wait, because, you know, I went from, I don't know, but okay, let's have a kid. We've been together forever. We've gone through these trials and tribulations. We're ready. And, you know, it's just been the most incredible thing ever. And so we kind of said, well, if people feel like this isn't for them because they don't have insurance coverage or, you know, they're not having any success, and we came and said, well, if we remove the financial barrier, would you try? If the answer is yes, like, let's do that.
What was clearly you've had cancer. You guys knew what it felt like to have infertility and have that financial burden now on top of the emotional stress, right? I have felt that as someone who made a lot of money. But I worked for AT&T. My husband's a teacher. We could afford, if we needed to do something. But it was a lot. And then take somebody who maybe doesn't make as much, and then it just becomes unmanageable. Mm-hmm. So what was the first conversation or the moment that this little seed was planted for you guys to start Worth the Wait?
Well, in my full-time career, I'm a financial planner. And part of that role with the families I work with is a lot of like charitable giving advice and, you know, what legacy do you want to leave? And Megan is very structured, even with like our planning, where I'm not with our planning because I do it all day. But we were having these discussions as to, you know, it feels like we're giving $100 here, $1,000 there. Like, how do we leave a legacy? How do we pick charities that have the same, that have a mission that we want to support, and how do we stretch our dollars and make them worthwhile? And I remember in 2020 just saying, like, why don't we just do our own? Like, let's start our own, because then you don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing. Like, we're pretty competent people. Let's just start our own. So what have we been through? What do we care about? And immediately we were like, infertility after cancer. We didn't do any research about any other organizations that were out there. We didn't even really do any research about, like, is this actually an issue? We just knew it was an issue for us and it sucked. And, we were in a similar position. We had the money to pay for it. And we were really, really fortunate to have that. But we realized there has to be a lot of people that don't. So
This was so aligned and so in the stars. I love that you guys started this. And you're right. It's like, if something affects you, it affects somebody else. I mean, there's somebody else out there who can benefit from it.
yeah.
So how do you then, if I'm at home listening and I know someone, I'm like, this could be perfect for this person. I assume there's an application process. And then the grants, you have like certain amounts that go to each family so you can kind of help other families. What if there's someone though, like let's say me, for example, and I'm like, you know what? I've caught on to this. I love it. I have a community. Let's try to raise enough money for one whole cycle for someone. Is that something we can just do a one-off and do, or?
Yeah. So anybody who wants to do a fundraiser for us, whatever their passion is, if they can turn it into something, we'd love to partner and come up with a creative way to do that.
Here's a creative way. We just say, hey, we're trying to raise like $15,000 and let's go.
Yeah. And that's also why we wanted to start our own, because, I mean, there's legal requirements and things we have to do to maintain our 501c3, but let's be honest, we can do whatever we want as long as it's fostering our mission.
Yeah.
So, we started our own because we did apply for grants, and it was a very informal process. We didn't know when we were going to hear back. When we did hear back, it was just a bland email that was like, nope, you're denied. Okay, well, I don't really need to know why, but I would have appreciated someone talking to me or at least giving me a time frame. So we took control and said, okay, we're gonna talk to people within, it used to be when we first started 10 days of their application being put in for emergency preservation. We can sometimes do it within 24 hours. It just depends. But to your point, I mean, we can pretty much do whatever we want. And as Worth the Wait gets bigger, we're just having to kind of formalize certain processes and certain programs, but there's still a lot of flexibility.
It's got to be so rewarding to when you get to know these people. Can you think of any that stand out where you're like, I'm sure they all do in their own way, but any that you just like?
Yes. We got a wedding invitation this week, and that was our first one. We get a lot of baby pictures,
right?
But the wedding invitation is for a couple that lives in Columbus, and I was like, yes, of course we will be there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So she had a pretty rare type of cancer. They were engaged, and so they froze embryos.
Yeah, and Megan is so much better at, I think, the personal relationships as to who has applied and received grants. And, I know all the recipients and all the stories too, but Megan's much better at like celebrating these successes, and I won't let myself do that, because I feel like if I let myself do that, we're going to get complacent with Worth the Wait and, not push more.
Hey, you need everybody. There's a lane for everybody.
Yeah.
You can't all be in the same lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even when we first started it, I said, like, I have a marketing background. And I'm like, let's have some strategic goals around this. Like, what do we want to accomplish? And Mike was like, I want to raise $10 million. And I said, I want to help 2 people.
Hey.
And so now we're in the middle.
No, that's what I think that the balance of those two things are what will make it fantastic. So tell the person at home how they can find you and anything else you want them to know, because I know you have another fundraiser coming up in September, so we got to talk all about that.
Yeah. So our website is worththewaitcharity.com. And if you know somebody, you care about somebody who is recently diagnosed with cancer or in survivorship, we have kind of two different lanes of applications that they can apply for. So we have emergency fertility grants, and that is for men and women for eggs, sperm, and embryos. There's also something, I don't know if you've heard about, it's called ovarian tissue cryopreservation.
No.
Super fascinating. We went to a conference and
Do tell.
learned all about it. So a lot of like women with blood cancer who are young are too ill to go through an egg retrieval because, you know, it's a lot on your body and it's technically a surgery and they may be too ill. And then there's really young girls that have cancer that haven't gone through puberty yet and can't do an egg harvest. So they actually take out an entire ovary. They slice it up in this very scientific way, freeze it, and then they can implant it back in. They like stitch it up. We watched the videos and I almost passed out.
Yeah.
They stitch it back in, and then you don't even need, in some cases, IVF. Like the egg just goes down the fallopian tube and boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did they stitch it back in?
In survivorship.
Yeah. When you're ready.
When you're ready.
In the same space, the same place the other one was?
Similar. I don't remember all of the technical
Yeah.
because my eyes were closed during most of this
Fascinating.
conference.
Yeah.
God, I love that. I just love
It's-
hearing that.
It's
they're
wild. It's the stuff that they're. It's amazing to see what they're coming up with. At the same time, it's incredibly frustrating. And the reason it's incredibly frustrating is it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem. We have all this incredible science and all these people focusing on these things, but it's so expensive. So you kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, you can do these amazing things, but if no one can pay for it, who cares?
right.
So let's solve that problem. And then the science will be even more creative.
It is a whole nother conversation around healthcare, you know, assisted reproductive technology costs. I know these things aren't free. I understand that.
Sure.
And I know that certain insurance companies are better than others. Certain companies are better than others. There are some people out there whose companies cover rounds of IVF. I mean, I applaud you. I applaud you because when I worked for AT&T, it's AT&T. And this was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have come, you know, a long way. And there was an adoption credit. I'll give them that. There was like a $5,000 adoption credit. But there was nothing that covered anything over the minor details of your coverage. So like, you know, like if you go to the dentist and like you need new teeth, but they'll pay for like the one cap, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we'll pay for your blood work, which is 4% of the cost, but this $20,000 bill, go get a home equity line of credit. There's something that just is so bass-ackwards
Oh yeah.
about it. And I'm not, you know, I'm not sitting at home every night reading all the laws and the details to say like, I know what we need to do. I just feel like from a dummy's perspective, where I sit, common sense, been there, we can do better.
Yeah. Being in the investments world, like I look at it and I say, okay, an insurance company is going to look at me and I'll say, hey, I have to go through fertility treatments, and they're going to say, that's your shitty investment. We're not going to give you the money. I mean, who can say that? Like it.
Well, it really comes down to the employers, and the employers don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you add a fertility waiver or rider, it's going to cost more. And they're
Yeah.
like, we've got happy people here without it.
Well, and you know, at the same time though, the insurance is so expensive for everything else. So you're going to have to pick and choose. Small businesses are the majority of businesses out there. I mean, I own one.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, and regular health insurance is expensive enough. So it's a huge issue. But
Well, I'm sure there's practical things behind closed doors where it's like, okay, how many people are going to be impacted by this
Yep.
versus the cost? I mean, I get that it's not as simple as, you know, let's just throw money everywhere.
Yeah.
But until they get this shit figured out, there are amazing people like yourselves and worth the wait out there who are taking things into their own hands. So here's what I would say to my community, to someone in my community who knows someone who's not in my community. The ripple effect of this is powerful. So worth the wait exists. Now that it's hit your ear hole, you can't unhear it. And if you know anyone who is going through cancer, has gone through cancer, that needs some kind of assistance with fertility treatments, send them to Worth the Wait. And also, I will say, I know some people out there who have some extra coin that are always looking. You're always looking to do something with your change, okay? So if you're looking to do something out of the box that you haven't thought of, what if you did decide to do a round of IVF for a couple who needs it? I will tell you that would be a gift that would just absolutely change somebody's existence. And even if it's not like, I'm always extreme, like let's do the whole round. Let's say you're out there, you're like, all right, Carrie, you're a little crazy, but I could do like a third, or 3 of us could go in for a round. DM me. And so if you're out there, sitting on your cash, call me.
Yeah, we have the best sales pitch, because when people are like, well, how are you going to use the money? It's like, I could give the money to a lot of couples tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we hear from people every single day.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool when we do have people that say like, hey, I want to make a really sizable contribution. I'm like, okay, here's the couple that you helped, or the individual. We keep saying couple, but we are open to everyone.
Yeah.
Like most of them are so excited to get this assistance. They send pictures, they send testimonials, they send pictures of their baby as their babies are growing up, and it's the most wonderful thing. So we have the emergency grants, but then we also have the family building. Okay. And so the family building are really what Mike and I struggled with. In survivorship, you're ready to start a family. You've got frozen sperm, you've got frozen eggs. You need to make a baby with it. So we'll help with that too. And when we started, obviously we didn't know a lot about what we were doing, because we didn't even Google to see, if there were other charities in this space, which there's a few, but we're unique in the sense we're doing emergency preservation and family building.
And men.
And men.
And men.
Yeah. So, and even we've helped a few people who are non-binary as well. So when we think about, how people want to build a family and survivorship, it comes in all different ways. So we've helped with sperm donation. We have a couple right now that just did the transfer to their surrogate out in California. So I'm anxiously awaiting and hoping for some good news from them.
I'm all about that surrogate life.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so wonderful, because we're hearing a lot from breast cancer patients who are on hormone therapy, and it's not safe for them to carry a baby. Mm-hmm. So this is their only option if they've had the opportunity to freeze eggs and they want that biological connection.
Okay, what about the Jeep fundraiser?
Yeah, so September 29th, we're having an event called Jeep Off Cancer. And we have a good friend who has 37 acres of land out in Amanda, which is near Canal Winchester. And he basically has turned this old farm into an obstacle course. So it's going to be off-roading for Jeeps. And then it's called a show and shine, which is kind of like a car show. So if you like your Jeep so much you don't want to get it dirty, you can just participate in one part of it or another. And then it's open to, the general public too, who just want to come out and support a great cause.
Are they going to have like a duck counting competition to see who has who brings the most ducks in their Jeep? That should, if they don't,
then we could do that as a category.
Actually, you really should, because people will show out. They'll probably tape them to the outside, up on the top.
Yeah,
I vote for what the duck.
Yeah. It's right now. I mean, we have so many categories for like the show. It's getting a little out of hand, but I'm sure we could add a few.
I mean, how could you not?
No, I know.
Don't miss on the duck. It's all I see anymore when I'm driving.
Yep.
Like there's another row of ducks. What if I did it in my Land Rover? You think that'd be weird? If I just started doing that?
You might get some hate from the Jeep community.
Or maybe I should do penguins.
Yeah.
What's up, Land Rover? We're sleeping over here. Well, Jeep's got all the ducks. Let's get something going.
Yep.
In all seriousness, thank you guys. I love knowing that you're out there. I love knowing that you're doing this. It's an incredible mission. And I personally am going to do whatever I can in my little sphere of influence to help propel the cause forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you. All right, Megan and Mike, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're still out there following your girl, follow me on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, find a couple friends, throw some money together. Let's do a round of IVF for somebody and keep moving, baby.